Hi, I'm Ross Ellis, founder and CEO of Stomp Out Bullying. And I'm very excited to be here today. We've got a great guest, Dr. Lou Himes. They are a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of New York with over a decade of therapeutic experience. Their goal is to serve queer communities through therapeutic services, clinical consultation, and supervision with allied mental health professionals and psychoeducational advocacy. They are committed to advocacy on behalf of members of the queer communities. As a queer specialist, they are open to an understanding of the intersecting identities and experiences that many queer folks hold. The openness and expansiveness of the queer communities often means a background in or curiosity about many ways of being in the world that are typically overlooked, oppressed, judged, and othered. In order to make space for and to serve individuals from queer communities, providers need to be comfortable with a wide range of topics and experiences that they may not have a consistent part of. The work with cis or heteronormative, I don't know, it sounds strange, but I think I said it right, normative folks, learning how to deal with one's own personal discomfort while remaining open and accepting of another's experience is a fundamental aspect of work with queer communities. Dr. Himes also consults with work and religious organizations. Dr. Himes, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. I want to jump right in because we've got some great questions.
Yeah.
So, how can teachers, parents, and school administrators best support LG, and this is a long one to say,
hmm
LGBTQIA plus children and adolescents?
Yeah. So I think, one of the biggest things, one of the most important things that adults in the lives of young LGBTQIA plus folks can do is to believe them, to not doubt them, to not dismiss them or their feelings, and to just listen without judgment, without, you know, saying things like, "Are you sure?" or, "Well, you've never dated a such and such, a boy or you're a girl, so how can you know?" Or, you know, "You don't know who you are yet." Things like that, which are very dismissive and really unhelpful and actually make a youth or a young person feel uh, dismissed, turned away, and untrusting. And so, if those things come out of an adult's mouth, that child or adolescent is not as likely to come back and talk with them again about anything related to sexuality or gender. And that includes identifying an adult when there's bullying happening. So, listening, not doubting, not dismissing, those are huge components of how adults can be helpful to youth and young folks who are questioning or outright just know who they are.
Right. I find it so sad that, I don't know anyone it's happened to, but I've read stories that when a child comes out, their parents are very unaccepting. In my mind,
hmm
if you brought a child into the world and you love that child, you're going to love them whether they're out or not out. How can
Mm-hmm.
you, and I know this wasn't one of the questions we were going to talk about, but how can you get the parent to be tolerant and understand?
Mm. Well, tolerant is, a word that isn't necessarily what we're going for, to be honest with you. We're really looking for affirmation, acceptance, excitement, even. Um, and how you break through the really it's ignorance, right? And I don't, ignorance does not mean stupidity. Ignorance means a lack of experience, a lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
So the best way to break through that kind of ignorance is simply that, to have experiences with people who are different, and to get to realize that they're not as different as you really think they are. They're, everyone is a human being, whether our skin is a different color, whether our hair is cut differently, whether our sexuality or gender experience is something other than what you identify with. We're all humans. We all
Mhm.
have a pretty core human experience. Of course, oppression makes our experiences different, but
Right.
ultimately, we're all still humans. And so, research shows that the more experience we have with things, people, experiences that are different from our own, the more accepting we tend to be.
Right. Right. Good answer. I like that. What is the biggest stress factor that LGBTQ plus communities face?
So, I mean, that is just a huge question. Which one's the biggest? I mean, there are so many big ones. Um, I think right now, one of the biggest stressors we're seeing in the community is actually legal. It, LGBTQIA plus folks, and particularly transgender individuals, are being targeted as political fodder right now in the United States, and probably in other places as well. But it's so rampant and so disgusting right now in the
Right.
U.S. That politicians are using transgender people and children uh, to boost their political careers, to try to get more votes for themselves, and in the process, they are legitimizing oppression. They are systemically oppressing transgender children by making it illegal or even a criminal offense for their parents to get them health care. Um, this is just, I can't even begin to tell you how much this impacts trans folks and the larger gay community, queer community.
Right.
And I use the word queer not in the dirty derogatory way it was used in the past, but it is a word now, of a term of empowerment, and it also keeps us from using the really long acronym that's hard to say.
Right.
But
Well,
queer
these are
really just stands for. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say when I was growing up, if you called someone queer, oh my God, it's like you said the worst thing in the world. It's
Well, it
so
was. I mean,
acceptable
it was
today.
meant that way. Yeah, and it was
Right.
meant to be derogatory, but now it's used. It's been a reclaimed word that the community is using to say we're different. And that might be a sexuality difference, that might be a gender difference,
Right.
that might be a relationship kind of difference, like including
Mhm.
polyamory. But it's basically saying we choose to step outside of that heteronormative box
Right.
and culture, and we have our own culture. So it's really a queer culture. And I realize
Mm.
I threw that in the middle of what I was saying, and now I'm not 100% sure
No, it's
what my
okay.
train of thought was.
Okay. We actually
But
have a question. I'm
okay,
sorry
sure.
to interrupt. You want to
Well,
finish
I
or
was,
we'll
yeah. Let me just finish that thought real quick because it did pop back in my head. I don't want to lose it
we can
again.
go
Um, I
away.
was just saying that all queer people are affected um, because when politicians or when lawmakers are targeting a subsection of an oppressed group, they're ultimately threatening the entire group. And as we
Right.
have seen in these last few weeks with the overturn of or potential overturn of Roe v. Wade, the next thing is, well, now we're going to lose gay marriage again. And so these things
Can't have.
tend to, right, these things tend to, the threat to one individual or one subsection of a group is really perceived as a threat to the entire group.
Right.
And so, even though the targets are specifically trans folks, that really will reverberate, and that trauma will reverberate throughout the
Mm-hmm.
entire LGBTQIA community.
Gotta stop. We have a question from Ruben I hope I'm saying your name right. Pacheco. Are you addressing bullying from gay people as well? And
Mm,
he also says, it is long past that of acceptance, in my opinion.
okay. I'm not 100% sure what acceptance, what that part meant. Ruben, if you want to clarify. But bullying is bullying. It doesn't matter which community it comes from. Obviously, there's detriment on both sides, right? If cis or straight people are bullying queer kids, then the queer child is being told that you're not normal, you're not okay, you're not acceptable to us straight or heteronormative people. If that's coming from the queer community, it has the same detrimental effect of saying you don't belong. But now this is the community where the person should be able to find belonging, right? Should be able to have a sense of groundedness and connection. And so it's just as detrimental. Uh, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna play the detrimental, Olympics of what's worse.
Right.
It is at least just as detrimental for your own community, um, to really
Sure.
betray, because that's a betrayal. So
It
absolutely,
is
that's a
definitely.
part of this conversation.
Ruben, I hope that answers your question. Oh, he says, yes, I agree, but not one time have I seen the queer community address their own behavior.
Mm.
What behavior?
Well, I'm imagining you're talking about bullying, and the bottom line is that there is there are always kind of levels of oppression, and the oppressed have been oppressed, and they know what that's like, and often we can repeat those behaviors. It's unfortunate, but it can absolutely happen, and it does. And I don't disagree with you that it would be worth talking about.
Sure, sure. I mean, when I see bullying, it's coming from queer, straight, it's coming from all over.
Mm,
And they start very young,
mm,
and we try to teach them that it's not a good thing.
mm,
Where is the empathy that children are supposed to learn? A lot of children are
yeah.
not learning that, and it
Mm,
just breaks my heart.
mm.
Our next question. Well, I don't think we asked this one. What are the greatest threats to LGBTQIA plus youth and children today?
I think we actually did start out with that one,
We
Ross.
start that okay. Since
Yeah, and then we
COVID,
did the
what are the
stressor.
biggest challenges? What are the
So
biggest
I don't have
challenges
a
with that?
I don't have a great answer to this question other than that there are a lot of challenges for everybody in COVID. And one of the greatest mental health challenges in COVID is that people spent 2 years quarantined with individuals who might be abusive to them. This includes like in domestic relationships. This certainly is in parent-child relationships, and so that wouldn't be any different for a child whose parents are not accepting, and then
Right.
this child is now isolated even further, and is literally quarantined or trapped in a home with a parent or parents um, who don't accept them for who they are. So that I mean, it's just that mental health piece for everyone being stuck, 24 hours a day in a home with people who are not supportive or healthy. That's been a problem for everybody who's in that
That's
kind of
horrible.
situation, but especially, sure, for queer
Right.
kids as
Ruben is asking, you're curious today. I like that. Why do you feel it needs to be taught in school, especially at lower level grades? You do mean bullying, correct? I'm thinking that's what they're asking. Well, for me, bullying must be taught in school, bullying prevention, and at home. Doctor?
well. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is that bullying is taught at home. Um, you know, and so bullying prevention can also be taught at home. And I say
Sure.
when I say bullying is taught at home, what I'm referring to is the fact that we tend to squash, make small, those who are in a more helpless or powerless position than we are. And
Mm-hmm.
so children are the most likely targets for adult bullying. And
Right.
when a child is squashed and dismissed and mistreated over and over at home, that's gonna funnel
Yeah, it's
down to
not
the
good.
next person lower on the totem pole, right? They're gonna target the person who they feel like is even more powerless and more helpless than they are.
Right. Right.
And nobody better than those who are different and othered.
Exactly. Ruben is saying not bullying, but the gay culture. Do you
That
feel
we
it
should teach
needs
gay
to be taught
culture
in
in schools.
school? I mean, are
Mm.
we talking about the stupid Florida law? Because I think it's stupid.
Mm.
Um, sorry, but it is.
I mean, the bottom
But I
line is, right,
think,
is that as I said earlier, the more interaction we have with difference, the less different it becomes, the less judgmental we are about it, and the more accepting we are. So, um,
right.
the more of, you know, Black lives we get to see while we're in school, the more of Latinx lives we get to see while we're in school, the more of queer lives we get to see from a young age. All of that is deeply, deeply important.
Sure. Of course it is. Um, what are the biggest difficulties that transgender people face? And I can only imagine it's a myriad of things because I know that
Mm.
9 out of 10 gay kids are bullied in school. So taking
Mm.
that away, because we don't know how many of that 9 out of 10 are transgender people.
Sure.
But I can only imagine. I mean, when I hear the news and I hear that a transgender person was beat up, it doesn't
Yeah.
compute.
Yeah. Well, the biggest challenges that trans people face is really survival. I know that sounds
No, it
drastic,
makes
but it's not. 42 to 50% of transgender individuals will attempt suicide in their life. That is a huge number. It's huge. And it is the result of oppression. It's the result of non acceptance. It's the result of not having access to medical care. Like they're now currently outlawed in Texas, right? That is a bill that just condemns trans kids to death. I mean, I know that sounds dramatic, but it is not
no,
an
it doesn't.
overstatement.
It doesn't.
Um,
From everything
so
that I've read,
legislation,
yeah, you're right.
so legislation, you know, this political pandering that targets trans kids and youth and adults, you know, bathroom laws, all of this horrible stuff. These are huge challenges. But they're not even the most everyday challenges because for most trans people in the United States, there are no legal protections that allow them to access medical care because due to their trans identity. So, an insurance company can simply say, "Oh no, you're trans. We don't do that." And so trans people have to pay out
Oh,
of pocket if to have life-saving procedures because insurance companies are not required by federal laws to provide such care. So you know, I mean, it really is on the same level as an insurance company saying, "Oh, like you know, well, only Jewish people get that particular disease, and so since you're Jewish, we don't cover it." I mean,
right.
that wouldn't float, right? I mean that, but it's the same idea. You're a
Yeah.
trans person. Only trans people have this problem, and so we're not helping you because we don't have to. There are some states that do protect the access to
Yeah.
healthcare for trans people. New York State is one of them, but there are no federal protections. And so, I mean, those are so suicide acts. I'm sorry, not
It
suicide, but
is.
the legislation that prevents medical care from happening, the medical industry, which prevents medical care from happening. These are huge challenges. We know that the number one most effective element in a trans person's life that prevents suicide is family acceptance. So,
That's
uh,
huge
and
because every family accepts.
absolutely, it's huge, but it's also a huge challenge because so many families don't accept and so are not accepting, and so that becomes a huge challenge as well. So
Right.
many homeless youth today are part of the queer community, and many of them are transgender, and they're homeless because they can't be who they need to be. They can't be themselves at home. So they have to
So
choose a life on the
sad.
street in
So,
order to try to survive. Yeah.
and they're
I mean,
probably
I feel
not
like I could
safe on
go
the
on and
street either.
on. Yeah, there's so
I hear
many
you.
challenges.
Yeah. We have Galano Mate. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Mateer said he or they became a high school dropout because they're tired of the Florida educators treating them like an animal. Well, that pretty much sums it up. From Florida, and the system is 100% stupid and aggravating. Well, that sums it
Agreed.
up too. I,
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't imagine living in Florida, and if you're queer, if you're a transgender person, whatever, these, I'm going to be nice, these politicians are just ridiculous and uncaring,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
horrible. Do you have any more that you can say to them? No. Yeah,
I mean, I
it's
agree,
hard.
and I'm really sorry that you had that experience. That you're going through that personally. It's horrific.
Right. There's a lovely transgender young lady. She has a TV show on TLC, Jazz Jennings. I don't know if you know of her. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, lovely family, lovely young lady. Everyone is so, they're terrific. And I watch it whenever it's on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was dumbfounded when I heard that they couldn't use the girls' bathroom. They were told they must use the boys' bathroom. And I'm scratching my
Mm-hmm.
head like, why? What's the difference? When I go to the theater here in New
Yeah.
York, the lines are so goddamn long that I go into the men's room, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ashamed of it or anything else. So I don't understand these people. But anyway, we're going to go
Yeah.
on to the next. How does gender identity affect stress?
Affects stress. Well, the simple answer is if we lived in a society that respected gender and or was even more progressive and realized that gender is just a made up construct, uh, there would be no negative effects
Right,
of
right,
stress around gender. But just like there are stressors that cisgender women face that cis male individuals don't face, there are stressors that transgender people face. Um, and it's not because
right.
of who they are inherently, it's because of the world we live in.
Isn't that charming?
Mm.
Can gender dysphoria be caused by stress?
Gender dysphoria can be exacerbated or made worse by stress. Um, it does, the cause of gender dysphoria is is a gender, I'm not even sure if I would say it's a gender issue. It is dysphoria is the way I like to describe dysphoria to individuals is it's like a feeling of depression but connected to a
Mm-hmm.
certain aspect of one's body that genders them in a particular way. So, excuse me. Um, so dysphoria is typically targeted at a particular part or parts of the body. And it's the way that those parts of the body make the individual feel gendered that causes a really severe anxiety or depressive kind of feeling, a
Mhm.
deep, like, existential sadness. Um, and so that is what gender dysphoria is. It's
Mhm.
not caused by stress, but like with anything else, is your cold made worse if you're also stressed out? Absolutely.
Right.
Is are your eating habits worse if you're stressed out? Absolutely, right? So anything is made worse
All
by stress.
exacerbated. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but not necessarily caused by it, no.
Right. What are some resources that are valuable to the queer youth community?
So this is a question that I don't have a lot of great answers for because
Mhm.
I am almost a Gen Xer. I'm right on the cusp. I'm technically a millennial, but not really. Um, and a lot of the resources for queer kids and youth and adults, quite frankly, are online. They're in social media, they're in subreddits, they're on Discord, and those are just places that I don't have a lot of familiarity with. But I will say the good old fashioned things like, um, you know, um, the Gay Straight Alliance or just gay clubs at schools. These are
Sure.
still really fundamentally important parts of supporting
Yeah, they are.
queer youth, especially in more rural areas.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree with you. I know that we have on our website, we talk about starting these gay alliance clubs, but we also offer resources
Mm-hmm.
that, depending on what the person needs, they
Mm-hmm.
can use those resources, and we're always looking for new ones. Um,
Yeah, I will mention one great one is the Trans Lifeline, and that may be on your
yes.
website already. They're just a
Mhm.
fantastic organization because you know that another trans person's going to answer the phone. And you know that they're going to get your experience, they're going to understand your pronouns, and they're going to be able to listen in a non judgmental way. So,
And
Trans
that's so
Lifeline is
important,
fantastic.
non-judgmental. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
who you are. I don't care what your lifestyle is, your gender, whatever. It doesn't matter. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't get it. How can non-LGBTQ plus students, I'm shortening it a little bit, best support this community?
Um, I think in the same way that adults can, which is just to listen, to be present, to respect people's pronouns and name changes, and to not belittle or demean them for who they hang out with, how they dress, who they like, who they don't like,
Right,
all of that.
right. I mean, I think the most important thing, as you said, is to be non-judgmental, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
care if
Absolutely.
if you're walking down the street, if you're a guy walking down the street in a green dress with a purple hat with huge, I don't care what.
Mm.
Can't judge
Yeah.
people. And even if we're talking about straight people, they should
Mm-hmm.
not be judged either. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's pretty. We're at the half hour already. Do you have anything more that you would like to add?
I mean, I could talk about this ad nauseum. So I think, I really just appreciate this work that you're doing, Ross, and that your organization is doing. And I'm really glad that you took some time out this month to focus on, queer kids. And
Sure.
I really appreciate it. It's really important work.
It's important. And wait for next month for Pride Month. We're working on that now.
Nice.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's just so important, and I guess because I'm such an open person
Mm,
that I can't understand when people do judge, but I don't like it.
yeah. Yeah.
And when I hear someone judging another person or not understanding the culture,
Mhm.
I get upset because I'm always trying to explain it or whatever. Like
Mhm.
we had some kids walking down the street at the school, and I heard them say that they had a terrorist in their class, and I knew that couldn't be. So
Oh
I went
god.
over and told them who I was, and they said, "Well, he wears a turban." I said, "That does not make him a terrorist."
Oh my goodness.
Ruben asked that we answer his last question. Um, what is your stand on transgender male to female playing women's sports?
Mm.
Going to be a tough question, I think.
uh, I don't know if I have a stance, Ruben. I just think that people are people. I think there's more. I know scientifically that there's more variance within sexes than there is between sexes. So if you were to find, I don't know, the thing that people tend to talk about is testosterone levels. So if you were to find a male with the most amount of testosterone possible in any male in the world, and a male with the least amount of testosterone in the world, there's a greater difference between those two people than there is between the woman with the highest level of testosterone and the
Right,
man with the
right,
highest level of testosterone.
right.
So it's just kind of a stupid argument and discussion, in my opinion. If you're not on testosterone, if you've been taking estrogen, like muscle, that's the whole point of taking estrogen, is that your body changes. Um, so it just seems like a really silly argument to
Right.
me. I don't even know why we're having it, to be honest with you. And I'll give you my 2 cents because I think it can maybe be educational
Mm-hmm.
to know that the differences are like almost unmentionable. Like, but other than that, there's a part of me that doesn't even want to address the question
Yeah.
because it shouldn't even be asked. Like, not you, Ruben, but I just mean like culturally. I think it's just a stupid question.
Sure.
There's just so much difference in bodies, and it doesn't have anything to do with gender. It's just silly.
Right. I am so glad you are a guest. Please, you're wonderful. Please come back again.
Thank you.
There's
Thank
so much more to address, and I am so impressed with your background.
you. Mm.
And just please come back.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.